Hey everyone, I'm Kevin and this is the In My Head podcast. Thanks so much for checking out another episode. Really appreciate your support. If you want to support or continue to support our podcast, here are 4 easy ways that you can do that. The number one thing is if you're watching this on YouTube, simply like and subscribe. On the bottom right side of the screen, you'll see a subscribe button. You can click that anytime. Click the like button, the little bell that notifies you when we post another video. This just helps with searchability. It starts putting our videos on the suggested page. More than anything, it makes these resources available to more people. The next thing is we have a Patreon page, which is a monthly donation website. You can go to patreon.com/inmyheadpodcast, or just go to patreon.com and type in Kevin Lindgren or In My Head Podcast, and it should pop up. You can donate as little as $1 a month, and 100% of your donation will go to supporting this podcast, and it will only go to the production of this podcast. I'm in great need of hiring people to film it, to edit, to streamline this process, eventually manage social media, but all those funds are going to produce this podcast and make it so we can do weekly episodes and get more information and education out to people that are in need of it. So Patreon, check that out. The next, if you want to buy products like CBD products, you can go to this link. You might just have to type it in. YouTube won't let me add links yet. So you can just go to this link or just click it in our description wherever you're listening to this. And that will send you to the CBDMD website. If you buy products through that link, a portion of your sales will go to the production of this podcast. Again, just to provide more resources for more people. The last one, and I don't receive any payment or anything from these people. They're just stoked on what we're doing, and I love what they're doing, and that's Betterhelp.com. If you go to Betterhelp.com/inmyhead, you can get a free week of online therapy, which is fantastic for people that are social distancing. They're in their home and they're not going to their therapist or anything. It's a great thing for you to check out and try. It's a free week of online therapy. You can cancel at any time without any penalties, or you can continue to do a monthly subscription. So I'm grateful for them. They're stoked on what we're doing, and I love what they're doing. So these are ways that you can support us, and we're just trying to grow this into something that provides more education and resources for people interested in mental health and getting rid of the stigma of it all. So thank you so much for your support, and those are ways that you can support our podcast. Okay, so this episode is with Sharesa Cancino, and it's really awesome just the way that we came into contact. She reached out to me saying she really liked my episode. The last one we did with my wife and I, said that she's stoked on what we're doing. We got to talking. We ended up doing a phone call. I ended up booking her to come on my podcast. She probably didn't expect that when she first reached out. So, but she was stoked to do that and share her experience. And I think her story is very, very powerful. We ended up spending a lot of time talking about marriage, her personal experience with it. We talked a lot about mental and emotional abuse. We talked about how she's dealt with mental illness through divorce, through taking care of a child, through getting married again, all these topics that people are trying to navigate that can often be really complicated and messy. And I thought it was a great follow-up to the episode I did with my wife. So thank you so much, Sharesa, for coming on. I think her story is so powerful. It's very personal, and I think a lot of you will connect with it. So thank you so much, and welcome, Sharesa, to the podcast.
In My Head is a free-form discussion podcast where we talk about issues of mental and physical health and well-being. This is not meant to be a diagnosis or treatment plan, but rather a place to share real stories and insights from professionals and people who have or are battling mental illness. We hope to create a community where people feel comfortable and happy with who they are. Hopefully this is helpful for you, and please share it with others. Thanks for listening.
3, 2, 1. Okay, what's up, Sharesa?
Hey.
I'm here with Sharesa, doing an episode for the In My Head podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course.
And this is random because we did an episode, I think, with my wife, and then you just hit me up on Instagram, and you probably didn't expect me to ask you to come on, but
no,
that's what it turned into.
It wasn't, but I'm glad you did, though.
Good.
I'm glad. I watched that episode that you did with Allie, and I just thought it was really cool, like the whole idea of what you're doing, talking about mental health. I mean, I think it's something that needs to be addressed more.
Yeah.
Not so taboo as something that we don't talk about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like that's the whole reason I lived most of my life kind of hiding it and pretending I didn't have it. And then it's like as soon as you kind of open up about it, I was shocked how many people in my close vicinity that had it themselves. And I'm like, oh, I do too. I've struggled with that too. And then you realize like, oh, this is just like a physical injury where people are like, oh, I get headaches too. Oh, I have knee problems too. Like, it's just, it's a part of life that a lot of people are dealing with, but unfortunately don't feel like they can talk about it.
Yeah, so. That's too bad too, because I feel like talking about it in itself is helpful.
Right.
And healing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so I was way inspired by your story. We just like ended up doing a phone call.
Yeah.
And you went through it, and that just our half-hour phone call alone, I was like learning so much about dealing with. We talked about like trauma, and in mine and Allie's episode, we talked about divorce a little bit, and we talked about people being in certain situations. And I even kind of did a disclaimer in the beginning, like, hey, just so you know, we talked about divorce, but there are situations where in taking care of yourself, there's many situations where it's safe and healthy to break away from situations. And so that's where I was really inspired by your story. So would you like to just kick off there and maybe say, start wherever you'd like, but I'm really intrigued on when you started experiencing mental illness, like, and maybe at what point you realized what it was.
All right.
Because I think you started pretty young, right?
Yeah. So the earliest I remember is, actually, I am not sure how old I was. I just remember we still lived in Aurora, Utah. I don't know if you guys know where that is. But, so I had to have been 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because we moved to St. George when I had just turned 6. So I was 4 or 5, and I just remember sometimes just having this weird disconnection from my body. Like this feeling of like kind of watching from afar. Mm-hmm. And everything would just move in slow motion. But when you're that little, it's kind of hard. Like, you don't know what that is, you know?
Right.
And so I've been dealing with it since I was very young. I didn't realize that it was anxiety until I was actually probably 21.
Wow.
And I dealt with it for a long time. But 21 is when I had my first anxiety attack. Like full on, you know, chest tightness and can't breathe, all that.
So if you don't mind me asking, like as a kid, when you were experiencing these episodes, like there's all these names for that. Like some we talked about, like depersonalization or brain fog, where you almost feel like it's a dream state. And you described exactly what I've experienced, like the slow motion. You feel like you're watching something like third person.
Yeah.
And was that mostly what you experienced as a kid throughout your life, or did you experience something now and you look back and you're like, oh, that was like an anxiety attack, or that was depression, or?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I guess I should retract a little bit. Around middle school, I started realizing that I had depression pretty bad.
Right.
I didn't realize I had anxiety to go with it. So I would get like little...
You're like, oh, fun, anxiety on top of depression. This is great.
Let's just mix those together into a yummy cocktail and just live in it. But, so middle school was really bad. That's when I found out or realized that I had depression pretty bad. And
then 21 was like your...
Yeah, 21 was like, okay, there's definitely anxiety on top of this.
Yeah.
And what happened was... I've always had stomach problems too, like ulcers and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I was out with my friends one night just dancing. We used to go out dancing at the one and only.
Where's that? Is
it's
that in St.
George?
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
It's a little hole in the wall bar, like behind a gas station. It's so crappy.
Sounds amazing.
But, you know, it was St. George and it gave us something to do. So we were out dancing, and I just remember that whole week my stomach had just been giving me hell.
Yeah.
And I was sitting at the bar, and all of a sudden I just feel like my chest tighten and can't breathe. And like start getting that really labored breathing, you know? And I didn't know what was happening. So I told my friend, I was like, hey, something's happening and I don't know what it is, but can we go somewhere? And we knew the DJ, so she actually took me up like behind the DJ stand where nobody could really see.
Yeah.
And I was just rocking back and forth and just, I mean, you've had panic attacks or anxiety attacks, you know how it is. But I just remember after that, I had a stutter for like 3 days after that.
No way.
Just because, like, I don't know why. When I get really bad anxiety attacks, I usually have a stutter for a few days afterwards.
Crazy. I've never heard that.
I hadn't either, but I did look it up. I Googled it.
You just Googled it right in there.
I just Googled it. And I guess it does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read about it. I know, right? Obviously it happens. But
that first one, though, is so scary because you have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
And it usually happens in a moment where you should be having fun. It should be relaxed. Most people I've talked to, that first panic attack, mine was in a restaurant with my in-laws, family, was totally cordial, laughing, and all of a sudden I'm like, what is happening? You're at like dancing at a club or whatever,
just having fun.
Just having fun. And then it hits and you're like, you would never think it's a panic attack.
Yeah.
You're like,
there's no reason for me to be panicking right now.
Nothing is happening right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a clear distinction to make to people who don't understand. I've had parents reach out and they're like, just explain to me what my child is going through or what my spouse is going through. And that's kind of what I always draw on. A lot of panic attacks happen in non-stressful situations. Mm-hmm. And so it's a clear indicator that either there's trauma or you're dealing with something heavy. And some people have them and they never have them again because they're maybe in the back of their mind they're dealing with work or something heavy. But clinical anxiety does pop up in these moments.
Yeah.
And it's just
it always pops up at sometimes the least opportune moments.
Which is so hard because I don't know if this happened to you, but for me, like, did that make you at all like not want to go back dancing or not make you want to do these things with friends? Or
it's actually funny. I didn't go for a few weeks after that.
Right.
And I kind of just went into myself,
Right.
For a few weeks. I just kind of stayed in and just, I didn't feel like being social,
Yeah.
Especially after that first one, I feel like it's so scary that, like, I don't want to go out again. What if that happens? You know, what if I'm in the middle of a restaurant or somewhere, and I just start freaking out again.
Yeah.
Because it's bad enough to have panic attacks, but to have them in public is like the worst.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, because I got to that point where I was like, I don't even want to go on that trip because what if I have an anxiety attack while I'm on that trip? I don't want to go to that restaurant because what if it happens again while I'm there? What if it happens when I don't have a car? Like if friends drive, I was always like, I'll drive, Yep. So yeah, you almost avoid things because of it. So did that set off a pattern of like panic attacks for you, or did it kind of not happen for a while?
It didn't happen for a while after that. My next big one, I feel like, is after I got married to my first husband.
Yeah. So for some reason, I thought you told me 21 was when you got married, or?
I got married at 22.
Oh, okay. So this is a little bit after this experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you want to go into any of that, or?
Yeah. I mean,
okay. This is where I think your story is like, I think all of it is powerful and inspiring, but the story of marriage and your daughter, and I think is like a real hero story to where you're at now,
Yeah.
So.
For sure. I mean.
think if whatever you feel comfortable sharing, I think a lot of, yeah.
Well, I feel comfortable sharing. I'm not shy about it, you know? I don't go out and broadcast it, but I'll talk about it. It's not
as we're broadcasting it right now. we're obviously not giving names or details or anything, but hey, like to me like trauma heals through communication and talking about it, and then getting resources on how to manage it and what to do, because that's what makes divorce so hard. Is it really is an ongoing thing. Like it's not just an event and then it's over, because it's kind of like you
have to deal with that person for the rest of your life still.
Yeah.
Wish that weren't true, but.
So so if you want, whatever you would like to share about that, go ahead. I think the part, The driving to the honeymoon is what breaks my heart about this story, because I've actually heard this happen many times where things are going great through dating and marriage, and then as soon as the wedding's over, something switches. It's happened to a friend of mine where they literally did the reception, got in the car, and he was like, all right, things are different starting now. Like, we're not seeing your family. We're not going to do this. And she's just like, what's happening?
Oh, like, I feel for her.
Yeah.
So I'll start at what I feel like is the beginning of the story.
Let's do that.
When I was 22, I moved to Logan. And I was working at Texas Roadhouse at the time.
Nice.
I happened to go out with the server crew one night after work for drinks. We went to a bar here locally, and there was a guy in the group, and he didn't say much to me. I just remember we were all playing pool, and he came up and he told me a joke, and that was it for the rest of the night. And I was like, oh, well, he seems nice or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I would say maybe a week later, I saw him at the gym. And he kind of said hi. Keep in mind, he's quite a bit older than I am.
Uh-huh.
He's actually 18 years older than I am. So at first, when I started seeing him at the gym, sometimes he would come up to me and try and strike up conversation or whatnot. Long story short, finally, I agreed to go out on a date with him, go get a meal with him. So he was persistent.
Wore you down.
Yeah. And so we got along great while we were dating. You know, that first meal was fun. We talked for hours, and we ended up going to a movie after the meal. You know, we were just getting along swimmingly. Right. And anyways, long story short, again, we ended up getting married a few months later. It was a very short courtship.
Right.
And we ended up getting married that summer. We started dating in, I want to say it was February. And then we got married in July. And, you know, everything was good. I look back now, and of course, hindsight's 2020. Mm-hmm. But there were some red flags that he showed now.
Yeah.
As I look back.
That you don't see at the time.
Yeah, at the time, I didn't see him or think much of him, you know. So we got married. The wedding was a fun day. And then we got in the car that night to drive to Vegas to go to our honeymoon. And I remember we went through a drive-thru to get food, and something happened. I don't remember what happened, but something happened that just set him off. And he had like this little temper flare up. And I was like, whoa, I hope that's not like a regular thing, you know? But then all through the honeymoon, he was just mean and grumpy, and like would be like, I don't even want to be around you right now. Like, cool, we're in Mexico. Can you please like be with me?
Yeah. On
our honeymoon, you know? So also, side note, he told me that he wasn't able to have children, which we planned on adopting because I've always wanted kids. Right. But I was willing to work around it, you know. I've always thought the idea of adoption was cool anyways. Yeah. But he told me that he wasn't able to have children. I ended up getting pregnant on the honeymoon. So that came as quite a surprise, as you can imagine. Like, I just remember feeling off, and I'm like, why do I feel just icky, just weird, you know? And I took that test, and it came out positive. I was so excited. Yeah. Like, I just dropped to the ground and I was just crying. I was so excited because I've always wanted kids,
Yeah.
you know, and I was so happy.
Yeah.
Even though he told me that he couldn't have kids, I'm like, oh my God, this is a miracle.
It's a miracle.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyways, so that whole day that I found out I was pregnant is just kind of like a surreal blur. I remember I went to Walmart and got more pregnancy tests just to make sure. But I also like bought some binkies and a little box so I could like
that's awesome.
present it to him, you know? And I was just pacing our apartment, just ready for him to get home from work. So I could tell him already. I remember I kept texting him and be like, hey, do you know maybe when you'll be home from work today? And he kept being like, oh, I don't know. Maybe around this time. But then that time would come and I'm like, you're not home yet.
Yeah.
But finally he gets home. And I was like, hey, let's go to the living room. I have something I want to tell you. And so we go in there and I've got the little binky in the box, like behind my back, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, just close your eyes for just a second and I'll tell you when to open them. So he did that and I pulled it out and had it in front of him and had him open the box. And he was just like, really? I was like, yeah. And I was like so excited. And he's like, I just better not hear this as an excuse for you to not be able to do things around the house or go back to work.
What?
And that automatically just like deflated me, you know?
Oh man, I can't even imagine.
I was just like, we're having a baby.
Yeah.
This is a time for like celebration.
After you told me you can't have kids, you would think you were probably expecting like, what? Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I can have kids.
Exactly. That's like along the lines of what I was hoping for and expecting.
Yeah.
No, by this point we'd been married for only a few weeks, but I kind of knew
Right.
already that there was something off, you know?
Right.
So fast forward, going through the pregnancy a little bit, it was a horrible pregnancy. Like I kind of told you on the phone, you know?
Yeah.
I was sick the entire 9 months, just throwing up. The whites of my eyes were just filled with blood because all the blood vessels had burst. I looked like a vampire.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awful.
Like I would go out in public and I wouldn't take my sunglasses off, like in stores, because it was embarrassing. Or not kind of embarrassing, but people would come up to me. Like I remember one time I was shopping and one of the clerks came up to me, even though I was wearing my sunglasses, and was like, I don't want to be rude, but what happened to your eyes? And I was just like, oh, it's just pregnancy.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Yeah.
But I just remember the whole time going through that pregnancy, he just got more and more awful. Like when I was, I want to say about 5 or 6 weeks along, I was throwing up and I actually fainted and had a seizure.
Whoa.
And I had to call him to come get me and take me to the emergency room. But he had to get off work and he was all pissed and put out that he had to come get me. You know, he wasn't at all concerned, like, oh my God, are you okay? You know, is the baby okay? He was just like, oh, I'll see if I can get off work. And like, you know, it just, through the whole pregnancy, I had no support from him whatsoever.
Right.
And it was miserable. I just remember women will be able to relate to this, especially when you're pregnant. At first, stuff hurts.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't want to be touched right now. Please don't touch me.
Yeah.
And he would just, I remember one time I was changing in the bedroom and he came up and he like was trying to like grope me or whatever, you know? And I was like, please don't right now. Like, I hurt so bad. I can't stand it. And he kind of like pushed my shoulder and was like, ugh, you're hard to be around right now. Just like,
oh gosh.
it was stuff like that, but like on a daily basis, you know? by the time delivery came around, labor and delivery was actually my favorite part of pregnancy, because I'm like, this is almost over.
Here it goes. Yeah.
But
you're excited to meet her at that
so
point,
excited.
and you're just like,
I had kept having dreams, those weird pregnancy dreams that she was going to come out looking like Gollum or something. But
and sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do. Get really cute. And then you have to lie to the parents and be like, she's adorable.
She's beautiful. Yeah.
But
totally.
Just kidding. All babies are beautiful.
Oh, of course they all are, but
Yes.
but yeah, I with my own kids, you're surprised because in the movies, the way they come out, they almost come out like a 3-month-old.
I know.
In the movies. And so when they come out, you're like, are they okay? Because they're like our first daughter came out like purple and was all slimy. I was like, is she doing okay? And they're like, yeah, she's healthy. She's great. And then you're like, oh, this happens. And then after a couple of days, they get color more. And
yep.
Yeah. So they do kind of come out looking like Gollum.
Alienish.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So through labor and delivery, he was in the room with me. But he also brought his mom in, which I didn't want her there in the first place. She wasn't one of my designated people to be in there while I was in labor giving birth, Right. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way that he just brought her in anyways, which, I mean, part of me, I understand, But part of me was just like, no, this is my personal time. Like, I'm going to deliver a baby and there's only certain people I want in here.
And that one's funny to me because that should be like fully understood by everybody as like the most important thing is that mom and baby are healthy. So whatever terms are set and whatever they need to make that happen, they should be like, cool. Yeah. Let's do that.
Let's do it.
And so it is kind of silly when people, I don't know, if people get hurt by that because it's really not about them. It's about delivering a new human into the world safely.
Exactly.
And mom's concentration and comfort level is what's most important in that process. But so that's tough. So sounds like a hellish ordeal that culminated into like a very beautiful like labor delivery that you were excited for. And
so my labor and delivery was actually went really smooth. Now mind you, I was in labor and he was chatting up with his mom the whole time.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's whatever.
Like, hey, over here.
Yeah, I'm like hello. My mom was there luckily too, so she was helping me a little bit, but she kind of was like, hey, like, your wife's in labor. Can you come rub her feet or help her or something?
Yeah.
He got all pissed off about that, but I know I make light of the situation, but mental and emotional abuse is very real.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, to anybody who's going through that right now or has gone through it and still needs support, just find somebody that you are comfortable with talking to.
Yeah. And
find a way to get out of that situation if you're still in it, because especially if you're dealing with mental health issues on top of it, it's just, you're not going to get better unless you help your situation
unless you take action. Yeah. The situation is not going to organically change overnight and magically all of a sudden.
Right. And trust me, like, there were so many times where I just wished that it would just change.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. You have to take action and you have to leave.
Well, and regarding, like you mentioned, like talking light of it, like anyone who's gone through trauma, mental health or mental illness and all that stuff, you've been through so much and you've kind of learned, like how in the beginning we're like, oh, fun, depression on top of anxiety, that's fun. Like obviously it's not fun at all, but it's like you've dealt with the trauma for so long that humor and comedy is sometimes your only route through it. And then I have to remind myself that on the podcast, like some people are just starting this, so they might be confused why I'm like, I start laughing about something and I'm like, it's more just like, I mean, excuse my language, but kind of like a shit show where you're just like, hey, this is fun. What next?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like great.
Shovel something else on.
Yeah, like no surprise that this is happening now. And so yeah, but I appreciate you saying that for people in that, because you can speak to that better than anybody can. And yeah, so I appreciate that. And I would just echo that, like people are scared, so they be quiet and they hold it in. And if you can find that person you trust to confide in,
just find anybody that you can trust, just anybody.
And the hardest part, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay, go ahead.
I think one of the hardest things too is, because I've seen this, not in my own marriage, but people very, very close to me are scared to confide in somebody because they're scared how that is going to change their perception of their spouse. So if you stay in that situation forever, now they're stressed that, oh, my sibling or my friend now is going to think bad things about my husband all the time.
Yeah.
Where in reality, it's like, this might be the person to help you through this, and then to help you rationally outside of the situation think of some options, like whether it's starting with therapy or just simple communication, or if it's beyond that point where abuse is playing into it, of other proper steps. So it's kind of the risk you got to take, like almost confiding in someone and saying, hey, like I am nervous that if this works out, I hope this doesn't change your perception. Because sometimes friends are just like, even if it's something you can work through, they might be just like, no, just get out. I don't believe you. He's treating you nice. Like, I don't, you know, so, but it's like, I think it's just always safe to, if you feel scared or you're trapped in a position, like, even if you got to kind of little by little, you know, that's kind of what happened with someone close to me. Like, we saw the signs, but then she felt a little more comfortable telling us here and there and there. And then it was like, once she told us, it was just like, we just saw it as clear as day, like, holy cow, like this is bad, you know? And then it gives them the strength, like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like,
that's another thing. When you're in a situation like that, you feel crazy.
Yeah.
Because,
well, it's the ultimate example of like gaslighting, blaming you
exactly
for something.
Gaslighting. That's,
we could do a whole
seriously, we could do a whole other episode on that. But you just feel alone and scared, and I know it's hard to reach out, but you have to. Like, you're not going to get out of it if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And so, what was that early? I definitely want to hear about your experience when your daughter was 2. You said you had like one of your worst panic attacks. How about from birth to 2 was life during that time with mental illness? So,
when I first got pregnant, they put me on Zoloft because my anxiety and depression started getting so much worse. I'm sure from the pregnancy and everything else that was going on. So I'd been on those medications and they were helping, of course. Anyways, I feel like I'm getting off track. Let's fast forward 0 to 2.
Cool.
I definitely had a lot of anxiety. I was going to say I didn't have any major anxiety attacks between the ages of 0 to 2, but I remember now I actually did have, I believe, 2 of them. But life was hell.
Yeah.
It was hell. You know, we were sleeping in separate bedrooms. In fact, we did most of our marriage. And I was taking care of Brooklyn by myself, is what I felt like.
Mm-hmm.
He would come home from work and go downstairs into the man cave, which is what he called it, you know, and just sit there and watch TV. And then he'd come up and be like, what are we having for dinner tonight? And I'd either be like, oh, I'm making this, or I'm actually going to go pick something up right now.
Right.
But it was always like, when he would get home, it was always like, what have you done all day? You know, the usual the usual.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And every mom right now is rolling her eyes like,
yeah,
oh, if you only knew what I've been doing.
If you only knew, I was actually chasing around a naked baby today. That's what I've been doing, okay? Because she went through this phase where diapers were just not okay.
Yeah.
But
and then they go to the bathroom before you can catch them. And,
right? She pooped on my carpet once. And I was like, really, Brooke?
That's just once is impressive, though. I mean,
it's true, I guess. But I did have a couple. We were fighting a lot. And in fact, I just remember this one time. I don't know why this just popped into my head. But I remember one time I was in the kitchen juicing. Like I was making fresh juice, you know? Mm-hmm. And I didn't cut the apple the correct way to put it in the juicer.
I'm already fired up at this story.
And he yelled at me for 2 hours over it.
To put it in the juicer?
Yeah, to put it in the juicer. I didn't cut it up the right way.
What does it matter?
It doesn't.
How you cut it.
Right? Like, but he went off on me. He's like, why do you always have to do things your way? And you never do anything I say. And like, I cut an apple.
Cut an apple, dude. We're making juice.
Yeah, I'm making juice. Can you not freak out at me for 5 seconds?
Yeah.
Like, there was this other time, his belt was sitting on the kitchen counter, and I was about to make dinner, so I took it and I put it in the hallway, so next time that I went down the hallway to our bedroom, I would put it away.
Yeah.
But I sat it in the hallway, and he was right there in the living room watching TV, and he mutes it, and he goes, what the hell was that? I was like, what? He's like, why'd you just put my belt on the floor? I was like, so that next time I go to the bedroom, I remember to take it back there and put it away. And he's like, do you know how disrespectful that is? He's like, I don't go around throwing your stuff on the floor. And just like, that's like one of the small examples that I can think of that the shit that I dealt with on a daily basis.
Right.
Like everything was worthy of a blow up to him.
Pins and needles, like every little thing I do.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I was always on the verge of anxiety attacks, you know?
Yeah.
But that one that I was telling you about when Brooklyn, it was on her second birthday, actually. My mom was visiting, and we were all sitting down eating dinner, and my mom was telling me, oh, I can't remember her name, my brother's ex-fiance. She was telling me, oh, she ended up leaving my brother, or your brother, and she left the ring on the doorstep and didn't even talk to him and just moved away. And that got me a little bit fired up, you know. I was like, I can't believe she would do that after all they've been through, and they're engaged. And I was pretty upset for my brother that he was going through that.
Yeah.
And I got up and I started clearing the plates off the table, and I went to grab his. And not even to him, like saying this to him. I was just saying it in general. I was like, I'm so pissed. I can't believe that happened. Like,
you said that to your ex-husband or to your brother?
I just said it out loud, just in general.
So who was it? Like, who was all there in that situation?
It was me and my mom and my ex-husband and my daughter.
And you guys were just talking about it.
We were just talking about it.
Yeah.
And I went to get his plate out from in front of him to clear it for him. And I was just kind of thinking out loud. I was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that happened, you know?
Yeah. So you said you just feel so mad and upset, and then...
Yeah, and he just flew off the handle. He started, like, somehow flipping the situation so it was about him. And he said that I was getting mad at him over it. And I'm like, I'm not getting mad at you over it. I'm just frustrated in general,
it's my brother, yeah.
And... he just flew off the handle, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to let you cool down. So I took Brooklyn upstairs to bathe her, and my mom came up with me. So me and my mom were upstairs bathing Brooklyn. And I just remember, like, one of the things that I'll never forget is just the feeling of tension that I always had.
Yeah.
And always on the edge of an anxiety attack. And I remember going up to bathe Brooklyn and just feeling that. And then all of a sudden I feel like this tingling down my left arm, and my face is tingling and my chest is tight. And I thought I was having a heart attack, like legitimately, because my anxiety attacks had never really manifested exactly in that way.
Right.
At this point, Justin had left the house. He went out for a drive to see some friends or something. And it was just me and my mom and my daughter there. And
you said he was getting like pissed at your mom too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
before he left, he actually yelled at my mom too, and told her that she had no business being there. And him and my mom never got along.
Right.
That was always like a big tension thing for him and I as well, because they just clashed.
Right.
Just bumped heads, But she was always cordial to him. Mm-hmm. She was never rude or anything to him. But yeah, he flew off the handle at her too. And to me, I feel like that's what heightened the anxiety attack. So I waited, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes to see if like the tingling in my arm would go away.
Right.
Or if I would get feeling back, and it just kept getting worse and worse. So finally, after about 15 minutes, I was like, Mom, I don't want to worry you, but I feel like I'm having a heart attack, and I need to go to the emergency room. So she, luckily she had a car seat in her car. She just has a grandkid car seat that she keeps in there. So she took me to the ER. And I got there, we told them what was going on. They admitted me pretty quickly. And I told them what was going on. And the doctor comes in after they run all the tests, he comes in and says, "Oh, you're fine. Maybe it was just like a panic attack or something."
Right.
And this whole time, like on the way to the ER and when I got there, I'd been texting and calling my ex-husband and saying, "Hey, just so you know, this is going on. This is where I'll be. If you could come, that would be great." And he showed up after I'd been there for like an hour, and he was just pissed the whole time, like telling me that I was faking it, and like just like, "Do you know how much money this is going to cost us?" Right. And the whole financial aspect. He's like, "You didn't even need to come in here. Why did you even do that?" Like,
right.
That kind of stuff, And I remember getting home hours later, and my mom was with my daughter downstairs, trying to get her to go to sleep. And I was just exhausted by this point, just mentally. And when you have panic attacks, sometimes it like physically drains you. You just feel like jello,
Yeah.
And that's the point that I was at. Like, my brain was mush, my body was mush. I just wanted to go to sleep and try and rest it off.
Right, and that's probably what most people unfamiliar with panic attacks and stuff, most unfamiliar with are the physical manifestations. Mm-hmm. And so it took me a long time to accept that it was anxiety, because I started getting migraines, I started getting chest pain, it would tingle down the left arm, all these like heart attack symptoms like you're talking about. Yep. I started getting pain in my joints, so I was convinced I had all these like neurological joint issues, and it just leads you down this like chasing doctors trying to figure out what in the hell is going on with your body.
Yeah.
But like, it's so powerful, things just start kind of shutting down to try and like protect your body or your brain or whatever the
Yeah, exactly.
the biological, pathways are. But that's what's the hardest part, is when someone's like, "Oh, it's a panic attack." You're like, no, like something's in there and you need to just take it out, and then everything will function properly. Like, I totally got like an MRI on my head because I was convinced I had like a tumor because of the migraines. And
I'm always convinced that I have like cancer or
for sure,
or like a tumor or something, and I always get like these sharp pains in my knees. And now that you mention it, I wonder if that's maybe part of it.
Oh yeah.
Huh, interesting.
And so so you're doing, not only are you having a panic attack thinking you're having a heart attack, you're in the ER, and then your husband comes and starts stressing about the money aspect. which is understandable, but is not helpful at all when you're the one sitting in the
Exactly.
in the ER.
Because that just piles on the guilt.
Yeah, it piles on the guilt.
That's so bad, especially when you're already like a mess, you know?
Right. Yeah. And so what happened from there? Like, where do you go from there? Like,
we got home and I went up to bed. I was laying down and I was like, he wasn't there at the time. He's like in the bathroom or something. And I was like, please just go down to the man cave and watch TV for a while and leave me alone. Like, I just wanted to be alone for a little while, you know? But he didn't. He came in the room and he started yelling at me for going to the ER and for costing us that much money. And my mom was downstairs at the time. And after he got done, it was like an hour and a half probably. After he got done, I just was like, you know, I'm just going to go downstairs. So I went downstairs with my mom and she's like, I didn't just hear yelling again, did I? And I was like, yeah, he was yelling again. It's exhausting.
yeah.
You know? I don't know. I get kind of emotional sometimes.
Right.
Because when you're in that situation, you just feel utterly and completely alone.
Yeah.
Even if you have your family.
Yeah.
You know, and even if you have friends. Because I don't know if it happens in every situation, but in mine, he tried to distance me from my family and keep me from my friends. You know, he would tell me, your friends don't even think about you. Like, just forget about them because they've forgotten about you.
Yeah.
And
gosh, man, that's brutal.
And just, you know, things like that. And you start believing it.
Right.
You start believing like, oh, he's right. I don't have anybody that I can talk to who's going to believe me.
And some people even just attach themselves to that emotionally abusive situation as like, maybe he's the one who's really cared about me this whole time.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you went through that, but you're almost just like...
He would tell me, like, when we would have explosive fights, when I say explosive fights, I mean him exploding.
Right.
I rarely retorted back.
Right.
Maybe a handful of times our whole marriage.
Right.
You start thinking, like I was saying, who am I going to talk to? Nobody's going to believe me.
Right.
And when you're constantly told that you're, you know, not worthy and you're not a good wife and you're not a good mom and you're a selfish person and all this, part of you starts to believe it and you start to pull away yourself from your family. It's like they don't need to do it anymore for you.
Right.
You can do it for yourself now because you start believing everything that they tell you.
So what was there like a defining moment that you finally were like, no, I need to, like, did you keep going after that, or were you kind of like, all right, this needs to end, I need to get out of this? And
he would tell me all the time when we would have fights that he'd be like, this is normal. Married couples fight like this all the time. And so
then
part
you're
of
like,
me,
well, marriage must suck then.
yeah. And he'd always tell me like, marriage isn't a fairy tale. Like, this isn't a Disney movie. You don't get to live a fairy tale.
Yeah.
And I was always, at the beginning, I was like, I know it's not a fairy tale, but I would think to myself, but is it supposed to be this hard?
Right.
Is it supposed to be like this? Is this actually normal?
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, you start feeling like that. And what made me finally take a step back is I had a really bad anxiety attack one time. It was actually another time I ended up going to the ER. It wasn't the second birthday, but another one. And they gave me some like Xanax or something, you know?
Yeah.
And they had also given me a pretty heavy painkiller because I was in a lot of like physical pain as well.
Right.
And I was at home we didn't get home from the ER until maybe 4 or 5 in the morning. And I was at home. I was still groggy from the medication they had given me, but I was taking care of Brooke. And my ex-husband called me, which I was like, oh, he's checking on me, like, this is cool. And he was like, do you need me to come home and help you or anything? And I was like...
You're like, what?
Exactly. I was like, if you could, like, that would be
right.
so great. That would be like a saving grace for me,
Right.
So about 30 minutes later, he shows up at home. And I'm laying on the couch in the living room. Brooklyn's actually asleep up in her crib. I had gotten her to sleep. And he came home and he just started yelling. And a lot of it's a blur because I was groggy at the time, but I just remember him like saying, "You're addicted to these pills already, aren't you?" Like blaming me of being addicted to pills. I'm like, they gave me one pill last night. Like, you can't even, that doesn't make sense to throw that at me. And
it doesn't work like that.
And yeah, I'm like, you don't know anything about that. Please don't talk about that anymore. But I was telling you earlier, after panic attacks, sometimes I get a stutter really bad.
Right.
And I still had one at this time. And he was like, you can stop your bullshit. Like, excuse my French or whatever, but you can stop your bullshit. I know you're faking it. He's like, stutters aren't even real. Like, they don't happen just because of anxiety attacks. And like, he's like, I know you're faking it. He's like, you need to get up off the couch and go be a good mom and take care of your baby. And he yelled at me for probably like a good hour or so.
Yeah.
And somehow he went off on a tangent on like, the dishes weren't done. And he was like, you can't even do the dishes. Like, you're going to lose your husband if you don't pick up the housework. Like, if you don't get the dishes done. Remember one time he told me, he's like, I don't even know why I got married because you can't even keep up with the laundry. And I was like, that one I did retort back.
Good.
I did. I was like, what did you just say to me?
Yeah.
I was like, did you really just say that? He's like, yeah, what's the big deal? I'm like, the fact that you can't see what the big deal is the problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because he'd always say stuff like that. And the fact that he thought that there was nothing wrong with it, or maybe he did and he just didn't care.
Yeah.
Is the bigger problem. But I remember things just got so bad. We moved to a house. And, you know, it was our first home that we owned together. I was pretty excited about it. And things just started falling apart. I ended up trying to leave him.
Right.
And I went down to stay with my dad. And I did it while was out of town. My ex-husband was out of town. And I left a note for him on the table just saying, hey, I'm going to stay with my dad for a little bit. Just so you know where we are. And I went and stayed with my dad for a little bit. After about 2 weeks of being with my dad, my ex and I had talked on the phone enough times for me to feel comfortable with him coming to see our daughter.
Yeah.
So he came to visit. And at this point, my dad didn't really know to the extent of which the abuse was happening, you know? And so I remember my dad was like, I need a few things from Walmart. Can you guys go together and maybe you guys can have a talk and get these things for me, you know?
Right.
He's trying to like encourage us to work things out. So we went to Walmart together, which consisted of us sitting in the Walmart parking lot and him yelling for about an hour and a half. And then he started feeling bad, I guess. He started trying to apologize. And he was like, look, if you're thinking divorce, like, He's like, just know that I'll make it so you never see Brooklyn again. And as a mom, especially, like,
nothing scarier than that.
There's nothing scarier.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I went back. You know, I didn't know what else to do, especially with, at that point, my dad was not really supportive. You know, he would let me stay there, no problem.
Right.
But he totally wanted me to go back, you know?
Right.
So I was like, you know what? Fine, I'll go back. And that happened another time. Things were okay for about a month after that. You know, I felt like he was trying to change or whatever. But then it just goes right back to normal. A few months later, maybe 6-9 months later, I left him again. And it sounds like a cop-out or whatever, but I did it while he was gone again. And I did that for a very specific reason, is because if I tried to leave while he was there, and he had already threatened me with taking my daughter, you know?
Yeah.
But my mom happened to be up visiting at that time.
Yeah.
So she stayed there for like a week. And during that week, we would like secretly pack some of my stuff, but try and pack stuff that he wouldn't notice that was packed, you know, like my clothes and stuff like that. Not the clothes in the closet, but like my dresser clothes. And finally, at the end of the week, we'd known he was going to be gone for the day. So finally, at the end of the week, he left. We finished packing my stuff. And he was gone, but we didn't know exactly when he was going to be back. So we were just throwing stuff in our cars. Just all the essentials that I couldn't live without, pretty much. You know, we left everything else up there.
Right.
And I wrote in a letter, actually, and explained to him, you know, why I was leaving, and where we were going to be. And I told him I took $100 out of the checking account just to help me pay for stuff that Brooke will need, but I will find my own job, and you won't have to worry about it. He reported us as missing persons, and I got a call from the sheriff the next morning saying, "You've been reported as a missing person. I'm required to follow up on it." He's like, "Is everything okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, everything's fine." I left a note for my husband telling him exactly where I was going to be and exactly where I was going. I was like, there's no need to worry. Everything's fine. So that got settled pretty quickly. But, so that second time when I actually left to St. George. So I was further away from him. I thought maybe that would help, you know?
Right.
I went about 3 months without seeing him, and about a month and a half without talking to him on the phone at first. I'd let him talk to Brooklyn.
Right.
Let him like FaceTime her or whatever.
Yeah.
Finally, 2 or 3 months into the separation, I finally talked to him on the phone. And he was so apologetic. He was just crying. Of course, you know. And just saying, you know, I'm going to change. I'm going to be better. And, of course, that never happens. But when you're in that situation, you think, oh, maybe he actually will this time, you know?
Yeah.
And so I went back again. And, you know, part of me is like, God, Sharesa, why did you go back again? Like, you knew better. You were separated for so long. I was doing so well. I was like the healthiest I'd been in so long. I was working out again, you know. And I had a good job. But as a child of divorce, I wanted to try everything that I could to make it so that my daughter wasn't a child of divorce.
Right.
So I did go back. And at first I regretted going back. But now looking back on it, I can't, because if I wouldn't have come back, I never would have met Ed.
Oh, wow.
I never would have met my husband.
Wow.
So when I came back, I ended up getting a job. And Ed was my boss.
Yeah. What's up, Ed?
Right? And, you know, things were really bad at home. I was having panic attacks. Sometimes I would have anxiety attacks at work. I would just go in the bathroom and just, like, be there for, like, 30 minutes. And people were probably like, why does she take so many bathroom breaks?
What's happening?
But I was just constantly on the edge of an anxiety attack, and sometimes that just boils over, you know. Anyways, I finally got the courage
and for someone who doesn't know what that's like I've tried for so long to think of analogies. Like, it's almost like the way you feel after, like, just sprinting on a treadmill as long as you can, and then just sitting down and feeling how your body feels with, like, your heart racing. After exercise, it's awesome. You're like, this feels so good. But imagine just sitting there
and
watching TV or at dinner or just playing with your child, talking to your husband, and all of a sudden you feel the way you feel after a sprint, sitting there doing nothing. It's like, it's the most overwhelming and confusing feeling.
It is.
And you're just like, my body's just controlling me. I have no control. And you eventually learn a lot of techniques to counter it, and a lot of prevention techniques, but it's like, in the moment, it's just terrifying. Like, I don't know. It feels like you just sprinted, but just sitting there.
Yeah, your hands start to sweat, like,
start going numb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get, like, really bad tunnel vision and my ears start to ring.
Oh, like, yeah.
I've got inner ear issues anyway, so I'm sure that doesn't help. But yeah. So I finally got up the courage to leave him, and it's actually thanks to that job that I got when I moved back here.
Right.
Because I met some friends there, you know, and they were like, "Dude, you got this," like, and Ed and I ended up going through a divorce at the same time.
Yeah.
And we were friends, and he helped me through a lot of it. Like, I remember one day specifically, I went into work and my eyes were swollen. I'd been crying all night, and I was just, like, on the verge of a panic attack. And I think Ed could kind of sense that something was off.
Right.
And he was like, "Hey, I'm going to go get some Jimmy John's for lunch. Like, let me buy you lunch, and let's go take an extra long lunch in the break room together."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Are you sure? Like, shouldn't I be working?" And he's like, "You're fine."
Yeah.
He's like, "This place will be fine. Let's just, you need some time to relax or whatever, you know." And that spoke volumes to me. Like, just the fact that, because at that point we were friends, but we were mostly still just like, that's my boss.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the fact that he cared so much, I was just like, wow, that's so cool. You know?
could see beyond, like, being a boss and just seeing that someone's in need.
Yep.
And yeah.
But we ended up becoming good friends, and now we're married, and he's the best.
Now you're more than friends and married, and
God, he's amazing.
That's rad.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy to hear, man. Like, I get so happy hearing those success stories, and, like, I feel so bad for the pain you've been through. But, like, glad it's over for you. I mean, that you've on to this next chapter. Mm-hmm. But I wish people could learn the things you've learned without the hell
to go through it
that happened because of that. Like, the strength you have now, and the knowledge. And I mean, we just met, but I know you're a good mom before all this, but the strength that you have now, what you can instill in your daughter, you know, like, I think about that too. Like, I try and
do hard things.
Yeah. You're like, you are powerful, and like you and yourself are strong enough for whatever comes your way. But on top of that, we're all here for you. You know, like, I try to always think about, I'm not one of those over optimistic, every bad thing that happens, like, what's the positive in this situation? But I have started doing that with mental illness stuff. Like, okay, there's got to be something good to this. And that's what I always come back to. Like my kids will never hear me just be like blaming it on them for feeling a certain way, or like, obviously if your kids mess up, you got to teach them, you got to like have structure. But like, if they feel the things I felt as a kid where I felt lonely, and there was just no knowledge back then to like explain what was going on.
Exactly.
Like you went through that so you can kind of sit with them. Like my daughter's only 8, but I already see certain signs of like the fantastic things I've given to her through genetics, like OCD and like this worry over future events, hypotheticals. And I'm grateful that I can sit with her in those and not be like, don't feel that way, stop feeling that way, but instead be like, I love that you have that, because I struggle with that, but let's find a healthy way to manifest it, you know? Like, so in a weird way, that's so good for your daughter, that she's gonna have a mom who has already had that empathy and love for her daughter, but this added level of knowledge and compassion to live a healthy life, mentally, emotionally, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think that's great. I think your story is such a, like, I call it a hero story. Like, I love it. I kind of get like the warm fuzzies, like just grateful that you made it out of that. I think a lot of people force themselves to stay in a bad situation for fear of what people will think of them, for fear that people will just be like, oh, you just gave up, you like blah, blah, blah. And it's so sad that really happens, but I feel so happy to hear of somebody getting out of that and then finding like an Ed and finding like new life and new strength and like a healthy environment for their child, which is most important.
It is.
You know?
Even though I didn't want my daughter to be a child of divorce, I'm not going to say I'm glad she is, but I'm glad still that I got divorced. Like, the fact that it made her a child of divorce isn't as hard on me now, because it was better for me to get out anyways.
Yeah.
It would have been a bad situation, because like people like my ex-husband, you know, they don't use rational thought. They don't care. Like, he would yell at me all the time in front of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd be like, please don't do this in front of Brooklyn.
Right.
And that would have just kept going on. And she would have just seen, you know, oh, mom and dad always fight. Like, that's how she would have grown up. And now,
yeah,
I mean, Ed treats me like a queen, you know? And she gets to see how a healthy, happy marriage is, how it should be, how somebody should treat her.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's so many lessons to be gained in that too, that like, I've been studying a lot about how kids deal with trauma, and they naturally put it on themselves. This is my fault, why this is happening. And I did that as a kid, as a product of divorce. I was like, oh, this is, you know, the cliche, like your parents are like, and this isn't your fault and all that stuff. But I subconsciously was doing that, and it was manifesting in all these crazy ways. And it wasn't until I was older where I was like, oh, like I was just putting a lot of stuff on myself as like, and so kids naturally do that because the two people, they're from birth, like these are the two people protecting me, in charge of me. Mm-hmm. And so naturally if something goes wrong, it's their entire universe, it's their entire world. So now she gets to be in a completely different environment, like a positive one, a calm one, positive reinforcement, you know, and so I'm grateful for your situation now, and just, I mean, it's awesome. I'm acting like it, like, yeah, like, like, I just love it, man. I think there's so much power in somebody taking control of their situation. It's so hard.
It is. It's so
and
hard.
I've never personally been through that, so I still can't even, all I can do is be grateful that you've been able to have the strength to move on, but I can't even begin to pretend like I know what that would be like, you know? So it's so heartbreaking, but I think it's powerful that you've found protection and friendship and marriage, trust, and obviously it sounds like support in your own family members. And so
some of my family members were not supportive at first. You know, I had a brother that whenever I separated from my ex-husband, would be like, what are you doing? Like, get back home to your husband. Like,
Yeah.
what are you? And I'm like, do you not understand what's going on? I've tried to talk to you, but you don't.
Right.
You're not hearing what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know?
And I get that because I almost feel like if I'm thinking back, I feel like I did that with someone close to me because I connected so much with their husband. Like I kind of grew up as like an insecure, not very confident, like even though I had friends and people that liked being around me, I just naturally was like, if I got a compliment, I'd be like, no, and I would turn it on them. Like, no, you're the one who's better. You're better than I am at that. And I hated compliments. But at the same time, I needed them because like
everybody needs them, you know?
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I hated getting them, but then I'm like, but I do need them because I need like to know I'm at least doing something right.
Yeah.
But then I met my friend's husband. I just was like, his confidence level, which to me I thought was confidence. In reality, I learned much later it was like heavy narcissism, very like, and so when my friend was like, we're struggling and getting divorced, and I lived in a different place, and this is before texting and stuff, so I like wrote him a letter. I was like super into the praying and talking and doing all this, so in my mind I was just like, I'm praying for you guys and I know you'll be strong and you'll make it through it. I look back and I want to puke that I wrote them that letter, but I really did it out of the sincere like love for them. But I had no clue what was going on in their situation. I learned there was like mental, emotional, and even a few times of physical abuse. And I want to go back in time and burn that letter and never send it. But it's when you don't have the full story, you think you're doing the best, you know?
Yeah.
So it is tough. And I've even gone back and been like, hey, had no idea like how bad it was. So I'm sorry, and I'm grateful you're away from that. And you've same situation, and she found a husband who's just awesome, much more level-headed and calm, and like no one's on pins and needles when they're in their house. Like, what's about to happen?
Yeah,
you know,
that's the worst feeling.
So, yeah, you're like, yeah, I personally experienced it. So
for sure, that's the worst feeling.
So if there's like, and if there's anything else you want to add, I'm happy to go as long as you want. The one thing I wanted to add is like, since you were out of that situation, is there any lifestyle, hobby, I don't know, diet, nutrition, exercise, is there anything that you felt on top of getting out of a toxic situation that you altered, that you saw results, or anything that you tried that made it worse? Or
well,
you mentioned hobbies being like
really
important to
I
you.
took up some hobbies, that's for sure. I recently took up sewing, and that helps a lot, especially when I'm feeling really anxious.
Yeah.
Something about just like working with the material and pinning it perfectly into place, like kind of, I don't know if I have OCD, but
it's satisfying.
It's satisfying. Like, and so I recently took up sewing, which is fun. Also, like being outside, bike rides are super helpful. Like, just like I was telling you on the phone, just sometimes going outside and feeling that breeze on your face is just revitalizing. Like,
yeah,
it helps a lot just to be outside. Sometimes I'll take Luna for a hike.
Yeah.
I love to color. Like, those adult coloring books are my ish. I
Those
love
are
those things.
I love it. Those are awesome. I think those have helped a lot of people.
Yeah, like
For sure.
and this is totally embarrassing, and I can't believe I'm about to admit it.
I love it.
But, and please don't make me do it. But I love to memorize raps.
Oh, dude, that's not near as bad as I thought you were
And
gonna
just
go.
like do it.
That's awesome. I love it.
Like this is totally nerdy.
What's your favorite?
But right now I'm digging. Have you watched Hamilton yet?
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't, but I hear like I have to watch it.
It's so
I've heard
good.
It's amazing.
You have to go into it with the mindset that it's a modern adaptation of what our founding fathers would be like nowadays.
Today. Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
A lot of people go into it with the mindset of, oh, this is set back in the old days. Like, and of course, like the costumes and everything say old times, the 1700s or whatever. But the lyrics and the music is all relevant to nowadays. And I listen to that soundtrack on repeat when I'm doing like housework or anything.
Yeah.
I'm always listening to it.
Yeah.
And it's just a play of rap, pretty much.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I have like the
I'm so
whole
mad I
first
haven't done
half,
that.
like the
Yeah.
first act memorized. Like,
I've naturally never been the biggest fan. Like one of my wife's favorite movies is Les Mis, and I feel like I just naturally have not been a huge fan of musicals, which is hilarious because I love Grease. It's like one of my favorite movies because I grew up watching that.
Yeah.
But like she loves Mamma Mia, Les Mis, and so when Hamilton came along, I just naturally was like, oh, it falls in that category. I probably won't like it. And I literally see
I promise.
people all the time like, dude,
promise.
you would love this because I love hip hop and rap.
I don't like musicals. I don't.
There we go.
Like they tried to
All
get
right.
me to watch The Greatest Showman. I fell asleep halfway through. Like I can't do musicals.
Yeah.
But this, especially if you're in a certain state of mind,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
It's
I
fun
gotcha.
to watch.
Yeah. All right. I gotta
Just
check
like
it
get
out.
into it.
I gotta check it out now.
You have to. It's so fun. It's 3 hours long though, so like maybe just watch the first half and then break it up a little bit because
Right.
it gets a little long. But
I'll listen to the soundtrack on my way home.
it's so good.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
It's so good.
I love it. I love that that's like one of your things, man. It's crazy how like I've always been way into music and like hip hop and stuff, but it's crazy how going through trauma and stuff, it kind of hits different. Like it's like it means more to you. You connect with things on like this
Exactly.
like deep level. Like this was like written for me, or this was like
Uh-huh.
you know, and yeah, like drives and pumping the music up. It's like become very. Always has been, but it's like extra special now and therapeutic, you know?
It's so therapeutic.
Yeah.
Sometimes just to like turn that music up, roll your windows down, and not give a crap what anybody's
Yeah,
thinking
dude.
about you
Yeah,
or
yeah.
who's staring at you at a stoplight. Just like
So true.
singing at the top of my lungs. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care. You can judge me all you want.
It's
I'm
like
singing
so-
Hamilton, okay?
Yeah. You're mad, like, well, it's honestly like if you're that person not doing that and you're driving and you see somebody rocking out to your car, you're never thinking bad things about them. You're like, I'm impressed.
Like, get it.
They get it and they don't care and they're obviously in like a good moment right now. So it's like there's been times I've been at a stoplight, literally last week. I was like, normally I would kind of look around who's on my sides because I was way into this song and I just was like, literally I don't care. Like I just feel so good right now listening to this and like being in this moment. And I think it's just a good place to get to where you're
is.
just like
It is.
it's almost just like you and the song and just what you're doing at that moment. And
Exactly. It brings you into the present, and that helps a lot with anxiety, I feel
yeah. Oh, mindfulness and being present is like a game changer.
For sure.
Especially with anxiety, you live in the future. Depression, you live in the past. Like, and you're just struggling to just be in this moment.
Yeah, can
you
I
know?
please just not be in either and just be
Yeah.
in the now?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Is there anything else you feel like you want to add? Any like any listeners that anything you want to say or?
If you have these thoughts and these feelings of like suicide and wanting to just end it and not be alive, find somebody
Right.
to talk to. Find anybody.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you feel comfortable enough talking to them, do it. Because I promise people want you around.
Right. That's so hard, but I think people need to know like that it happens, that it's common, that when you feel that way, it doesn't mean anything other than seeing it for what it is, recognizing that it's happening, and then speak up. Like you gotta have people in your life that you trust,
You have to.
that you can share with, and in turn, being willing to be there for people going through heavy stuff as well. This like give and take process of
It's
friendship
definitely
and caring for
take.
people. And so I feel extra grateful that you have people in your life that you can reach out to.
I have a hard time like talking about myself a lot because I don't want to come off as like, Sharesa's talking about
That's
herself
what this
again,
is about, though. It's to help people understand that they're not
but
alone.
That's what I'm saying is like, I know I need to get over that and talk about it. But I'm just trying to help other people. I don't want people's pity or like anything like that. Because I know that there's other people out there who are going through this.
Yep.
And I just want to help them.
Yeah. And I think that's noble, and it's beautiful that you have been through yourself. And I think most people that go through it are like, the cliche saying, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, like, because you go through it and it's so heavy. If I don't want to add anything to your story because that's your story and that's personal. The only thing I will say when it relates to suicidal ideation is that your mind or your mental illness has a way of telling you that would be a way of helping your family members. Mm-hmm. You convince yourself that they would be better without you, and that's probably the biggest lie your mental illness tells you. And people get suckered into that and they believe it and they think it. And you probably have too, known people in those personal situations that go through it, and I can't express how much worse it makes it for everybody involved in their life. And I'm not just saying you should have this pressure on yourself that these people are going to be affected, but I don't think kids ever fully recover from that. I don't think spouses ever fully recover from their loved one taking their life. And there's no other way for them to deal with it than thinking that they weren't enough to help you. And so I think those are also things to be conscious of in those heavy moments, to know that the fact that you immediately recognized it for what it is, I found that to be the most helpful thing when it comes to suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, and all the other gamut of things, is the quicker you can just call it out what is happening to you, because you have enough experience to be like, this is spiraling, this is anxiety, this is a suicidal thought. Calling that out, taking the action, doing the things that help you feel better, reaching out to people. It kind of takes the what do you call it? Like the wind out of the sails. It kind of takes the power away from it, just by recognizing that it's happening.
Yep.
And not convincing yourself like they would be better, because we all know they wouldn't. We all know that your daughter needs a mom. She needs Ed. She needs positive reinforcement in her life. And your story just gives so much more power to like, damn, my mom has been through some heavy stuff and she's still here for me, So that's why I say your story is like a hero story. It's powerful because so many things from all the things you've experienced are just going to be this powerhouse for your family. And it doesn't mean to say like you just have to suffer so people can learn, but it gives you power too. It gives you empathy for other people. It gives you love for yourself. And in a weird way, I don't know, not everybody gets to this point. In a weird way, you do appreciate these trials, because I've said this a million times on the podcast. It's given me a level of love and acceptance and empathy for people going through things that I probably will never experience. Like struggles that people have that in the past I might have just been cold to, or like, oh, it's just, just get over it. That's easy. Just because it's easy for me, just like my anxiety and depression, like someone doesn't feel that ever. So in their mind, it's like, just stop feeling that way.
Yeah, just
and
be happy or...
So in this weird way, you experiencing heavy things gives you this added patience and understanding for other people. So my grandpa committed suicide the year before I was born, and I never saw my dad recover from it. So because of that, suicide was a very open conversation growing up for me. My dad would literally ask me, have you ever had these thoughts? And I had, and said no. But the fact that he was asking me, I'm like, he's very conscious of this. He's very conscious of the demons that you have to exercise and think through and power through. And so again, trauma feeds empathy in a weird way if you find a healthy way to make it through it. And
for sure.
I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful that your daughter has such a rad mom. I'm grateful that you found so many amazing things in your life. And I think your story is powerful. And I'm grateful that you shared it. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really like honored that you would have me on.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
I'm honored you would come on. Thank you so much. Is there anything else? I think everything you said regarding taking care of yourself and especially regarding abusive situations is very powerful and can give a lot of, especially women, hope in their situation.
Yeah.
and to maybe for them, you know, making through things through therapy and other people giving them the strength to leave a bad situation. So
yeah,
I appreciate you talking about that.
If there's one thing I could add, and it's not even me really adding anything, it's just me repeating, like, please, if you're in a situation like that, just find somebody to talk to and help you get out of it.
Yeah. And help you have some like outside perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Always helps.
Always.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thanks so much, Sharesa. I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me in your beautiful home and taking time to do this episode.
Of course.
Cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, again, thank you so much, Sharesa, for coming onto the show. I really appreciate you sharing your personal experience. Provided a lot of education and resources for myself as well. Again, if you want to support our podcast, the number one thing you can do if you're watching this on YouTube, simply like and subscribe. Click that subscribe button, click the bell to get notified when we do a new video. Go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/inmyhead podcast. Become a monthly donor. It can be as little as $1 a month. And yeah, 100% of that goes to the production of this podcast. You can buy CBD through our link that we have in our description, or this link right here. If you buy products, a portion of your sales goes to, again, the production of this podcast. Again, betterhelp.com/inmyhead. You get a free week of online therapy. Check that out. I hope that it's helpful for you. I don't get paid by them. I'm not an affiliate. I just believe in what they're doing, and I'm grateful that they're on board with what we're doing as well. The other one, always, if you're just listening to this on Apple Podcasts, give us a subscribe and a like and write us a review. All those things help us just increase this searchability. But more than anything, I just appreciate you listening, and please share this with anyone. I think you sharing it for someone that you think it's helpful for is one of the best ways that we can just keep this communication open and let people know that you care about them. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you next episode.